Welcome to the Exploring Washington State podcast. Here's your host, Scott Cowan.
Today, my guest is Lilly Longshore. Lilly is a speaker, a writer, and a wheelchair traveler. Lilly, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So we got introduced to each other because somebody on LinkedIn tagged you and Explore Washington State in an article on accessibility and traveling.
And I think it was Accessible Go.
Correct.
Accessible Go.
Yeah, and that's exactly who it was. And so when I saw that Explore Washington State was tagged, I looked at the article and I was like, And then anyway, I clicked on your website and one thing led to another. I reached out to you, you contacted me and we had a great conversation. And so today our basic premise is we're going to learn more about you and we're going to learn more about wheelchair accessible travel throughout Washington State. So can you give us a bit of a background of you?
Well, I am a wife and a mom, and I happen to be C5-6 quadriplegic. I really love traveling. I always have loved traveling. When I was in my early 20s, I joined the Peace Corps and was down in South America, and I just have a passion for it. And when I ended up in a wheelchair 19 years ago, I at first thought that I would have to just not travel much anymore. But as I got a little bit stronger and got back some mobility, I learned that I could plan things out well and I could still travel. And I started out, of course, just within the neighborhood, within my, neighboring towns and that kind of stuff. And then I kind of spread out to different states and then took my first, within the United States flight back to visit family. And eventually I realized that people who were using wheelchairs were going to Europe and all kinds of cool places. And if they could, I could. And so I ended up doing a lot of research and a lot of planning and have made, probably about 5 trips to Europe now, which have been really awesome. So, and I've gone a lot of places. In planning the trips for my family vacations here in Washington, usually in Washington State, Oregon, the adjacent, states here, there's just so much to do right here in Washington that over the years I've written it down just so I would know which hotels worked for me. So if I go back, would I like to stay there again? That sort of thing, which venues I thought were really cool. And as years went by, it was like, wow, I've got an awful lot of information that I've documented, and so I decided during COVID when I was sitting here doing nothing, that I was just going to put all this together and actually publish it and just, have it available as an ebook on Kindle, which I've done. And, I think it's some really good information. I mean, I have a way and a method that I plan for vacations. And so that's how the book is written. I pick a town and then I find little things around the town, neat little trails or historic forts or, little excursions that I can do that are wheelchair accessible. And I've done all this stuff. And if I liked it and it worked well for me, then I put it in the book.
Yeah, the book is great because you start off in Vancouver, which I believe you kind of live in the general Vancouver area. So you started off, let's say, close to home. And you've got some stuff in here on the Renaissance Trail and the Columbia River, the Vancouver's Farmers Market, which I think is great personally.
Oh, that's an awesome farmers market.
I'm a fan of the farmers market. I cannot claim to be an expert on Vancouver, so I'm not going to give you a whole lot more praise there other than what I can say is the farmers market's awesome. Fort Vancouver, I haven't been there in years. So what I remember of it is so vague that I couldn't say, but you reference all these places as good places to go if you're in a wheelchair. So I think that's awesome. And then you keep branching out kind of from your home base and you go cover a lot of the state. So in your travels, I'll put you on the spot right away. Let's just start the interview by putting you on the spot. He didn't know this up. No, it's good. So share with us a couple of your favorite places in the state that you've gone, that you've enjoyed, and that you think are really exceptional.
Yeah. Well, there is a lot in Washington State. It is a beautiful state. So it's hard to narrow it down. My two of my favorite places, I do love the Long Beach Peninsula. Cape Disappointment State Park is really neat. And they've they've got some neat trails within there. They've also got a couple of lighthouses, and I can get down to the base of one of the lighthouses. I can't get into it, but I can get down to the base of it and see, the whole view from the. It's just on a nice point and everything. So that's pretty neat that I can get there. They have a really neat trail called the Discovery Trail that goes about 8 miles from the edge of Cape Disappointment all the way into town, into the town of Long Beach. And Cape Disappointment actually is in Ilwaco, so it goes far enough that it goes from one little town to the next. And it goes right, you're basically, I don't know, maybe 40 feet or so away from the ocean. You're obviously not on sand. It's either asphalt pavement or it's boardwalk sort of stuff. But it's beautiful. It's just a beautiful view, and you're right there with the birds flying overhead. And it's a wonderful place. And I really like the carnival type downtown that they have. I mean, there's things for everybody to do, no matter what age you are. It's a nice place. So that is one of my favorite places. I like the nature that's there. They also have they have a few different state parks in Long Beach. They've got Fort Columbia State Park, which is kind of an interesting history. And that's pretty hilly, but I was able to go from the parking lot across some grass to the concrete area where they have the fort itself, and see a lot of the fort that way. But going through the park, it's a little too hilly to go beyond that. But there's quite a bit. Long Beach is a pretty neat place, and I love the Olympic Peninsula, the whole Olympic Peninsula. I guess if I had to pick one area, I would go to the north part of it, and both Port Townsend and Port Angeles and those areas. And if I have to choose one of those, I think Port Angeles is really cool because it's like the gateway to the Olympic, the Olympic National Park, I think.
National Park, yes.
Hurricane Ridge is right there, and that's got some really beautiful views, and they've got some long trails that you can go on from there. But it's just, 20 miles or 30 miles from Port Townsend. So the two of them, if we go to one, we go to the other, and they both have different styles of waterfront area, and they are both really cool. And they're the downtown of Port Townsend is really neat. And then Port Angeles, the waterfront, I think, is really cool. So it's plus you're so close to the national park and Hurricane Ridge and Lake Crescent, and a bunch of stuff up there. It's just really a neat place.
Yeah, that is indeed a beautiful area of the state.
It is.
But I'd like so as I warned you, typically when I ask questions, then the guest will say something and then I'll go down a rabbit hole. So warning, right. Here we go. In your book, you reference taking, I want to get to it in the book, but I want to say you reference taking a ferry, I think, from Port Townsend. Am I correct in that? Was that the ferry that I'm thinking about? Anyway, in the book, you reference that not all the ferries are wheelchair accessible. Is that?
I have been told everyone I've gone on has been accessible, and okay. I've never had an issue. I know it was from Port Angeles. There's that Blackball ferry.
Yes.
And it's not a Washington State Department of Transportation one, but I had no problems with that. It was just the same size as the WashDOT ones. I think that I have been told that not all of them are wheelchair accessible, so you're supposed to call ahead. Okay. And I know that, like, when I have, even on the WashDOT ones, I call ahead and they want you to go and park in a certain place or in a certain order, because they need to know if you're going to get out of. We have a van with a wheelchair ramp that extends if I'm in my power chair.
Okay.
And my book, by the way, is written from the view of my power chair. I do travel sometimes with a manual chair, especially when I fly to Europe. I will take my manual chair because honestly, there's just less to break on it with the airlines, as rough as they are on wheelchairs. So I don't take my power chair with me when I go to Europe. But I do the power chair at home, and it just gives me much farther range. It's just, I could go for miles. So it's good from that standpoint. So that is my perspective in the book. Okay, now what was I talking about? Trying to get out of my van. So if I'm in my power chair and I have they need to put me in there without anybody next to me so I can get out. Then once I'm out, they'll have me close everything up, and then I have to stay out until we land. Is what my experience has been. And so I'm given the choice of, do I want to stay in the vehicle the whole time, or do I want to come out? And I always want to come out because you can see so much. I mean, it's like a mini cruise, I mean, you can see,
Right.
if you're lucky, whales, so.
So just for clarity's sake, I mean, you once again said something and it gives me a question. Why do you think it is that if you decide to exit the vehicle that you can't get back in before the end of the journey? That seems odd.
They park somebody right next to you. They pack cars in there.
Oh, okay.
And
okay.
So you need like 8 feet to the side, and that just, if they're packing everybody in there. And so they need to park as many vehicles as they can on the ferry route. And so, that's why.
And then you can't get back in until that new vehicle that's next to you has been removed so that you can. Okay, got it. Okay, thank you.
Which is exactly why there's stripy areas next to handicap spots that people think that they should be able to park in because it's just there. And those are unloading zones. I mean, you are preventing somebody to get in and out of your vehicle when you park in those stripy areas. And I think a lot of able-bodied people do not realize that's what they're doing. I mean, that's why it's illegal to park there, and in the state of Washington, that's like a $400 fine. So.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So you're a big fan of Long Beach, Port Townsend.
I am. Yeah. Actually, the whole Olympic Peninsula. I just love that area. It's really beautiful. Yeah. I love Anacortes too. I love the Skagit Valley Tulip Festival. And that's actually out of Mount Vernon. But yeah, there's just a lot, there's just a lot in the state. I'm a big fan of festivals. There's so many different like county fairs and festivals are two of my favorite things to do that almost always they are going to be wheelchair accessible because the fairgrounds, they do try to do what they can to make those accessible. I know Clark County's got a great county fair and their fairgrounds are wonderful. And I've actually been to the Clallam County Fair one year, and that is really nicely accessible as well. It's a lot smaller, but it was a pretty cool little fair. In Skagit Valley, like I said, the Skagit Valley Tulip Festival, they have all these different calendar of events that you can go to throughout the month of April on a typical year. And a lot of, not everything is, but there's a lot of things that are accessible. And they actually, I've spoken to the people who arranged that, and the woman gave me a whole list of, probably about 20 different events that are accessible.
Okay. That's
it's
awesome.
On their radar. It's on their radar. So
that's awesome. I'm going to go back to Long Beach because there's a photo in your book that I got a chuckle out of. And that's you in a wheelchair borrowed from the city of Long Beach. And I'm getting a chuckle because since this is not a visual episode, it's just, spoken word. So I'm going to try to describe it. Is you're sitting there in this chair made out of PVC pipe, which first off, I just chuckled about, but it has these balloon tires on it so that it appears that it would go really well on the beach on the sand, which I would think that a narrow tire would be a bad fit. So I don't know, like
sinks right in. Yeah.
Yeah. But what I think is, I would have never thought of is that they have this available so you can schedule it. You can borrow it for a set period of time and then you can get out there, and that's through the city, but the World Kite Museum is the one that handles that, right?
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. The city owns the chair and they needed somebody to manage the loan system. And so that's done by the World Kite Museum. So they do a very good job. They're very helpful there. And that particular one that they have, you can't self-propel. You have to have somebody push you because it's one, I think that most people in wheelchairs know what I'm talking about, those big PVC balloon tire things. You would need to have somebody push you onto the beach, but it's still really cool to be there. I mean, it had been, oh my gosh, like 15 years since I'd been on the beach when I was, learned that they had that, it had it available. And oh my gosh, it was so cool. It was just great being out there in the waves.
Yeah. The photo of you, from here, it's hard to tell exactly how close you were to the water coming in, but you are 6-8 feet away. I mean, you're right there at the shore. Yeah. I mean, you're not, that's great that you could, but so how was it? How easily does it move around in the sand? Was it a fairly easy to get?
My husband didn't have any trouble with it. He has to push me in it, and he's not a big guy. He's not a big guy, and he had no trouble with it at all. He said it was fairly easy to push, and yeah, he didn't have any. Sorry, that was a loud thing on my end.
We did not hear it.
Oh, that's good. Okay, sorry. But at any rate, yeah, he had no trouble pushing it, and they do tell you they don't want you to go into the waves. I mean, you can be on the wet sand, but they don't want you in the water. I think it's just a lot messier. They have to clean it up a lot or something, but it's so tempting to go, into the waves. But yeah, you respectfully, you're borrowing something from somebody, and so I didn't do that. I went to the wet sand and I was able to reach down and get my fingers in the water. If I reached out, so that was really cool to actually touch the ocean for the first time in like 15 years. It was pretty cool. So, yeah. And there's a few places. We had talked about Port Townsend a little bit, and Port Townsend right next door is Fort Gordon State Park. They have a beach wheelchair that they loan, at least one. They may have two. And I actually, the Governor's Committee on Disability Issues and Employment, they have a grant program for people who have a type of, if they have a kind of basically a disability sort of committee in their county, like a panel of people, they are eligible to get grants on doing something good for the disabled community. And Jefferson County got that grant one year, and they got these beach wheelchairs for it that are now available for free for people to borrow when you're at Fort Worden State Park.
That's great. So that it gives you more flexibility, more freedom, and to go out, like you said, touch the water, if you will.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
When we talked before this recording, we had mentioned you'd mentioned snowboarding. Your son was into snowboarding, I think. Did we kind of talk about that?
No, he's not a big no. I think you might be thinking of somebody else. He did. The only thing I can think of is that my son is blind. He's got a retina disease called retinitis pigmentosa, which I did not realize I had, and that has everything to do with how I got hurt. Night vision is the first thing to go, and so that really affected me and has a lot to do with how I fell and broke my neck in the dark. But at any rate, my son, the form that we have is on the X chromosome, and he, of course, being male, only has one X chromosome, and so he is much more affected by it than I am at a much earlier age. So by the time he was out of elementary school, he was already legally blind, and it's degenerative and just gets worse and worse and worse. So in the middle school, he ended up going to the State School for the Blind, which actually is right here in Vancouver. So how lucky is that we landed here in Vancouver, not even knowing that he even had a vision issue. When he was 5 months old when we moved here. And so, he was able to go to middle school there. And they have a really wonderful volunteer program, and they take those kids up on Mount Hood for skiing or snowboarding. So, he did learn to snowboard, and they assign each visually impaired kid an expert skier. So they go down the mountain with this expert skier, and that was his experience with snowboarding.
That's very cool.
It was really cool.
Okay.
I don't know I don't remember talking to you about that, but that's my son did snowboard.
Well, yeah. So that's awesome that there's that available for kids, because let's face it, at my age, I don't want to go down the hill. And if I go down the hill on a snowboard, it's all over.
I have a friend who was trying to convince me to transfer into some sort of a ski chair type of thing and go down with an expert skier. And I don't know. I worked really hard to get the mobility back that I have, and I just don't want to fall and break anything again. So I didn't do it,
Yeah, I can't say I blame you on that. I think that's that's the safe play there.
It's safe, yeah.
So where else? So I'm scrolling through your book here, and we're going to put a link to your book on the show notes for this, so that I encourage people to go take a look at it and pick up a copy, because it's really kind of cool. Not only is I'm glad that you wrote this from a wheelchair point of view, but I'm also looking at things going, I haven't thought about that place in a while. So it's full of really interesting suggestions here. So I'm thrilled with that. let's talk about Fort Worden a little bit more, because I shared with you a little story beforehand. But is Fort Worden a good place for wheelchair accessibility?
It is. It really is. I mean, they've got it's been a few years since I've been there, but they have a really long, like a pier or a dock or whatever you want to call it. And I remember that being nicely wheelchair accessible and rolling to the end, and you get a different view because you're out there in the water. And I was able to, with my power chair roll up, I had to pick which slope to go up. I remember, you can't just like go anywhere. So I just picked the mildest, the gentlest slope, and I was able to get all the way to the top on, where the gun turrets and stuff are, and look at over the Strait of Juan de Fuco. So that was pretty cool. And if you aren't able to do that, like if you have a manual chair or for whatever reason, you can get keys from the state parks people to open a special gate that allows you to drive your vehicle, so you can still get on top, and if you can't do it in your wheelchair. So they make things like that available to people who are disabled. So I think that's huge. I mean, it's another place that, of course, this is in Oregon, so it's not in my book, but Yaquina Head Lighthouse and that whole recreation area down there in near Newport, Oregon, they do the same thing, where if you can't make it in your wheelchair down to the intertidal zone area that they have, they give you keys, some sort of a special pass at the visitor center, and you can get all the way down there in your vehicle and then get out. So I think more parks are doing that kind of thing to make it equally accessible for people that are using mobility devices.
So bouncing around here, going back up to Skagit County now, you've got some great photos of Diablo Lake.
I like that. That's beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah, that's just, and so when were you there at Diablo Lake for this book? When was the last time? The reason I'm asking is, can you still go across the top of the dam, or have they blocked that off for security reasons?
I was there maybe 5 years ago, and at the time, yeah, they let me go across it. And it was the thing. I am a civil environmental engineer. That's what I did for like 20 years. And I think dams are really cool. I just think the whole construction of them are really cool. And so if there's a dam to be seen, and to me, it's just interesting, And so I put some things in the book that I think are really interesting. Like I made sure to go to the Grand Coulee Dam. It's out in the middle of nowhere, and it is not a real wealthy area. And I mean, they probably could use a grant to fix their sidewalks. The last time I was out there, they had that little rough areas in their sidewalks and stuff. But I mean, I really wanted to go see this. Everybody's heard of the Grand Coulee Dam. It's a big deal, And it's still the biggest concrete pour in the whole United States. It's still the biggest producer of electricity in the whole United States. So it's really a pretty interesting thing, and they got a great visitor center there. Diablo Dam, of course, is a lot smaller, but it's in such a beautiful area, and right there in the middle of the North Cascades. It's not real. That whole area, the North Cascades area, is that North Cascades National Park is not super wheelchair accessible. You have to pick and choose certain sites, and so you pay attention to a specific mile marker. And there's a little trail. I think there's like the Happy Creek or something like that trail that I thought was really nice. It's like maybe a half a mile long, and that's really close to Diablo Dam. So for me, going across the dam, I thought was really beautiful. We kind of hung out in that area. They have a boat that you can do a little a cruise on Diablo Lake. But as I recall, when I was there, that was not accessible. I could not get on it in a wheelchair. And I don't know if that's still the case or not. But it was a beautiful lake, and then you go up, up past that. We were on our way east of there anyway. And there's some really beautiful overlooks that are worth stopping and taking a look at. I saw kayakers. I'm not really sure how they got into the water, but that's something that I would want to investigate in the future to see if there is some sort of a place where you could go, you could transfer from a wheelchair into a kayak and go. I'm not really sure if that's possible, but it would be worth looking into. So there's potential. It's just, it's such a mountainous area there. inherently is not as accessible as some of the valleys or wetlands, parks, and that kind of stuff.
So do you go kayaking? Is that something you do?
I do not.
Okay.
That's something that I'm just starting to be interested in. And then when COVID came along, it kind of like, stopped that because I don't own a kayak and I would have to rent everything. And so I didn't want to expose myself, and I just didn't do it. But I have been on the Columbia River on a slough where it's not real, fast current or anything. I've been kayaking there. I've been canoeing. Some of the lakes, the Lewis River, there's a few lakes up toward Merwin Dam and Swift Reservoir and that kind of stuff. So I've been there a few times in a canoe. So that is something that I could transfer into those boats and I can paddle.
Well, that's great. Okay. So moving east from Diablo Lake after our little kayaking excursion, you mentioned Winthrop. And
yes.
When I was reading this, I laughed because I don't think of Winthrop's sidewalks as being easy to walk on. So I didn't think it'd be good for a chair. I tripped on the boardwalk. But Winthrop's a great little place. And you found it to be fairly accessible too.
Yeah, it is. It is. It's I didn't have any trouble with some of the stores. I mean, not everything there is going to be wheelchair accessible. There's steps in on some of them, but some of the places were really nice. I mean, there was, and I don't remember the name of the place. It was like a kind of an outdoor eating area, and you could go in to the inside, and there was a couple of choices of restaurants to buy things from, and then you came out to this big picnic area on kind of a big board deck, and that was pretty cool, and that was totally wheelchair accessible, as were some of the other stores. And then there was a trail that was really nice that went along a river, and I don't remember the name of the river that's over there, but it was a nice little river trail and a nice footbridge that went across from the Winthrop Lodge. I think there was I have the name of it in my book and the name of the trails in my book. But they were nice, paved, mostly paved. Some of it, where there was one of them that had partly graveled, but it wasn't deep gravel, and I didn't have any issues in my power chair. But yeah, it was a nice place. I don't think there's enough there to spend like a week there. I would do it for maybe a day or two, check it out, and then move on, which is exactly what we did.
Right. The trails you're referencing are the Susie Steffens Trail and the Stahiqua, and I hope I pronounced that right.
And I think that's the name of the river, the Stahiqua River.
And then there's the Methow River.
Is that what it is? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, let's keep going east a little bit, because you mentioned Cooley Dam, which I've always, how do I want to say this? With no offense to Cooley Dam, it could be so impressive, but I always seem underwhelmed by it when I go there. I mean, it's this massive structure, but somehow it just doesn't. Now I've heard, and I've never been there, but they do light shows in the summer at night against the dam, and I guess it's kind of cool. But that is a massive structure, and you're correct. The area that it's located in is not thriving, and the sidewalks are not great. But
right.
it does have a great tourist center and all of that. So there's lots of things there.
I'm sorry, I was trying to.
Oh, you're fine.
This thing keeps on popping up, and I thought, well, maybe if I close it, then it'll just. I had opened your email so I could get the and so that's
the link.
The link, and so that's what keeps on talking to me.
Okay.
Okay. That's good.
So you referenced Chelan and Lake Chelan, which is a huge east side tourist destination.
Yeah.
What did you find in Chelan that worked real well for you?
I like Chelan. Chelan's a pretty cool place. They have a really it's a riverside park downtown, and attached to that riverside park, you start going along the sidewalks, and eventually it connects to this big, like a river reach trail. It has a really pretty sizable trail that's like maybe 2 or 3 miles long, and it's really beautiful. I mean, it goes a long ways along the river, and then it goes kind of along a road part ways, and then down this great big like a connecting boardwalk type of thing that kind of loops you back along the other side of the river. And I really liked that. And one year when we happened to be there, it was during, I think it was Earth Day in April, and their little community fire department had this. They were had a cookout, and everybody was invited for free. I mean, they were making hot dogs for everybody, and you just got in the line, and they gave you a hot dog and potato salad and whatever else it was, and it was just really nice. Everybody sat in these long tables, and it was just to me it was such a neat community feel, and just a small town atmosphere where everyone was welcome and they were doing something nice for everybody. And the other thing that I thought was pretty cool, on in the park they were having Earth Day festival of some sort, and there was one girl that was she had a goat that was pulling a cart, and it was like a green, like a giving rice to kids. It was like a green a green goat ride, sort of fair ride. So I thought that was kind of cute. And then they have cider houses. I know everybody knows about the wineries out there, but they also have cider houses. And the cider trail has gotten to be a big deal out there. And we went to at least, well, I guess just one of the thing on their cider trail, which was nice. And it was wheelchair accessible, but there was only one area that was accessible. The rest of it was like the real tall stools that counters you couldn't reach, that kind of stuff. But there was one area in the particular cider house we went to that was accessible. So it's not completely, but if you have a place you just need one place to stay. So
right.
One place to sit, and it worked for us. So I was happy with it. Yeah, it's just a nice community, and I thought it's just pretty and it's sunny, unlike this side of town in the winter.
Well, that's why we moved here to Wenatchee 4 years ago, is because I got used to, well, I'm tongue in cheek, but it felt like it was 11 months of winter over there. It was always gray. It just seemed, and it wasn't, and I'm exaggerating, but it got to that point for me where I was like, I want weather other than drizzle and gray. I want cold. I want hot. And so Cheyennes, you get that over here. And, you get winter, we have winter, and we also have summer. And
how hot does it get in the summer over there?
105,
okay. That's hot.
Sometimes, yeah, it's hot. It's a dry heat.
Does it stay hot like that for a while, or not for very many days?
It's once our weather here, once it gets rolling, it's going to stay cold or it's going to stay hot. We get, freezing temperatures, below freezing temperatures this is the way I'll describe it to you. I am ready for spring. I am ready for summer. I am ready for fall. And then I'm ready for winter. You get you're like, I can't wait for it's a little bit cooler than it is right now. And then you can't wait for the snow and ice to go away type thing. This winter's been real mild. Last summer wasn't as hot as it's been in my short-term experience here, but we definitely will spend 60 days, 80 degrees plus.
Wow.
Yeah. Okay. But unlike when I lived in Tacoma, where if it was 85, I was completely miserable because it was 85 degrees on the west side of the state of Washington. It just didn't work for me. Over here, 85 is a very comfortable temperature.
Okay.
Anything above 95 and I start to complain. But so I've got more tolerant to heat. My mother moved over with us as well, and she actually has embraced it more than I have. Even I was really shocked. My mom is a lifelong Tacoma resident, and for her to move over here, she actually said she likes the sun and the warmth now, so it's kind of cool.
That's great. Yeah, I have not spent much time in Wenatchee. We've gone through on our way to Cheyennes, but I haven't really stopped and spent much time there. I know that they've got a really nice, like the Apple Loop or something like that trail that I've heard is really a good one, but I've not gone on it myself.
Yeah, that's a 10-mile loop. You can start either in East Wenatchee or in Wenatchee. We have a place called Pybus Market here that is an old steel factory that's been converted into, think Pike Place Market on a very small scale. Okay. It's not fair to compare them, but it's and it's got it right there is river access to, and it's a concrete trail that goes about a 10-mile loop around You go over obviously two bridges to get across the Columbia. So you can do that if you wish. So speaking of, since I know that's 10 miles on your chair, and I'm going to guess that there's different ranges on chairs, but
there is.
What is a typical range on a power chair?
I could talk about my chair. I could go like 5 or 6 miles, especially if it is mostly asphalt. I find that for my chair, if it's kind of gravelly, especially if it's like a little deeper gravel, it burns my battery down pretty quick. I was just talking to somebody else that she has like, I think she said 12 or 15 miles on hers, but she has special batteries. But she said what she notices is that if it's level, she can go 12 to 15 miles. But if it's a lot of uphill, she can't, so which makes sense. It's just, you know, that I would just suck up more power. So I think as long as and she does have different batteries than I do. I just have whatever it came with, so yeah, but I figure 5 to 6 miles is not bad, that's not a bad distance. Most wheelchair accessible trails, a lot of them that I've been on are really short, like less than a mile.
Okay.
So, but then we're starting to see more of them, like the Discovery Trail around Port Townsend that goes, eventually it's supposed to go all the way to La Push. I mean, that's like, 35 miles or something? That's a long way.
That's a long ways, yeah.
So, I mean, they're starting to put more trails like that in, where and right now that one, you can't complete that, but there's sections of it that are, 10, 15 miles a piece. So, I think it's really cool. I look forward to doing that one day.
So as electric cars become more prevalent and people start thinking, well, I've got a range of X miles in my Tesla, I've got to pull over to get it charged. So they're planning the trips that way. But in your case, how long does it take to get a charge back on a chair? I mean, do these charge quickly, or is it what does it take?
I have a Pride Quantum right now, and I just plug mine in every night. And just let it charge overnight. And usually within the first, it depends on how depleted it is. A typical amount of use in the day, within a couple hours, it's charged. But if I've drained it down, then it's going to take, 6 hours or something to charge. So
okay, so they don't charge super fast then.
No, mine does not.
No, it's just, this is just all stuff you don't think of. So you've covered, and we're skipping through a lot of your book because we want people to take a look at your book. So let me ask you this question. Do you have plans on writing another book? What do you think you're going to do with this?
I can see probably doing updates, like maybe a second edition where I check out more areas in Washington. And after I get a substantial amount of information, then I'll do like a second edition and just make it be more complete,
Mm-hmm.
But I really wanted to get at least something. I thought I had a lot of information to begin with. I mean, I've got a lot for over all these years, and I wanted to get that out to people, especially if they're like if you're newly injured, and, it gives you things you can do, and I just wanted to get that information out to people. I also am thinking I could probably do something with Oregon State or something with British Columbia, a similar book, but I don't know. I haven't started on that. I think probably Oregon State first if nobody else gets to it. But if there's already something out there, which I did not know if there was or not for Washington, I was not aware of anything for Washington State. And so, that I figured I would just put what I had out there, So, and then the other thing too is I have seen a really old, like a 2002 book that was put out by, I think it was like maybe the state parks or something, like Washington State Parks, some government agency, and it's a printed thing, and it had a lot of wheelchair accessible trails, but that was exclusively what it was. It was just wheelchair accessible trails from, like 15, 20, for a long time ago. And some of it, at any rate, so I wanted to add other things that I thought were really neat. Like I love the Tulip Festival. I think like the different festivals that are there. Leavenworth has tons of different festivals throughout the year. I had, the county fairs, different museums and different, the interpretive center in Skamania County.
That's great.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that it just puts it all in one place where, if you've got kids, there's things that you can do. If you're there with your husband, there's things you can do. And so, I kind of steer away from doing hotels. If I happen to be in a hotel that worked for me, I've said where I was, but that just gets to be a whole different category of thing to include. And it's really individual. Like what I personally need is different than what somebody else might need. I don't use a Hoyer lift, so all the stuff that goes along with that, I wouldn't, I wouldn't put that in there because I don't always notice is there room underneath the bed for the Hoyer lift to work, or what is the height of the bed? Because I can actually, if I'm holding on to things, I can actually stand up and pivot and sit. So I don't have to have the bed be exactly the same height as my wheelchair for an easy transfer. And I know a lot of people that's not true for a lot of people. So all I can say is that these are the places that worked for me. So there's a lot of information that I did not include that I've seen in other people's books, but I just want the fun stuff. I want to go on the sculpture walk in LaConner, or I want to go, the Skamania Interpretive Center was really pretty cool. And there's a zip line place that will help you zip line, even if you're in a wheelchair. They've got to figure out how they can help you do that.
Wait, stop. Explain that. You must explain. How's that happen?
The Skamania Lodge Adventures, they have, probably 4 or 5 different zip lines. They can't get you up to the very tallest, longest one, but they can let you go 2 or 3 times on their shorter ones. So they will help you, even if they need to carry you and strap you in or however they need to do it. They can get you to where the platform is so you can get on their harness or whatever they call it. And then you can zip line like the medium length ones. And they'll, instead of having you go on all 5, they will have you go on the medium ones multiple times, because you can't go, they won't be able to get you up to the highest ones.
I would have never, you could have asked me, I would have never guessed ziplining would be something that would be.
Oh, there's a ton
that's
of
awesome.
stuff. Yeah, there's a ton of stuff, and so, another thing that I have not done this, that we went over, this happened to be over in Oregon. They have also a tulip festival over in Oregon in, what's the name? Woodburn Tulip Festival. And I know sometimes they have hot air balloons over there. And, I went over there one time because we were going to see if I could get into the hot air balloon, but they were there yesterday, but not there today, type of thing. So I wasn't able to go up, but I do know that there are people who I know who use wheelchairs who have been in them. And so there's all kinds of different things that you can do that you don't really think about. Trains, like the historic trains around here, just north of here, they have the Chalachi Prairie Railroad. There's only like 3 historic trains in the area. There's one by Mount Rainier, there's the Chalachi Railroad, and then there's the Mount Hood Railroad. And I've been on the Chalachi Prairie Railroad, and the last car of the train is wheelchair accessible. You want to pick a good day because it's outside. It's not, the entry is like, oh my goodness, like 15 inches wide. There's no way you can get in there in a wheelchair. So it's the outdoor train that you can ride on, but it takes you all the way through, the Gifford Pinchot Forest, the areas around Yakult and stuff. It's really beautiful. And so, things like that, I tend to seek out that kind of stuff. I love the wheelchair accessible trails, but I also love the historic dams. I love the historic forts. I love festivals, the interesting ways of transport, like ferry. I love Washington's ferry system. It's just, to me, really easy and it just gives you a great view of, you might see a whale, you might see a dolphin, who knows, so it's pretty cool. I've never seen one on there, but I still love it.
Yeah, Washington State's ferry system is
it's awesome. Yeah,
it's that's a good word for it. And I never get tired of taking the ferry back towards Seattle and getting the skyline of Seattle coming in. say from Bremerton.
It's really neat. It expands your, what you can reach, because you can take the one from Port Angeles to Victoria, BC. I've done that one, and then speaking of festivals, I've been to the Lavender Festival and Swim. That was really cool. The Purple Haze Lavender Farm. That was beautiful, so it's pretty cool.
We interviewed the owner of Purple Haze several months ago, and that's a great place. That place is, so we went there, and bad podcasting story. We'll spare the guest the story, but that's a neat place. You're right. And we were there off season, so it wasn't, in bloom or anything. And it was still almost overwhelming off season. So I'm kind of scared to go back when it's in festival season because it'll be overpowering.
Yeah, it's a beautiful place. Washington State does have a lot of beautiful places, and it's so different depending on what are you on the east side or the west side, and both sides really have something really beautiful to offer. So it's a neat place, a neat state.
Yeah. One thing we didn't talk about in the book, you mentioned Walla Walla, which is a very interesting part of the state as far as I'm concerned. I get a kick out of Walla Walla because, if you've been in downtown Seattle, you know that you can't turn around and not see a Starbucks. I mean, it's just kind of like I think Starbucks design team figured out that, okay, the average coffee beverage will be consumed in this many steps. 3 steps before that, we will have another location for you to buy. I swear that's how they planned it out. But Walla Walla is the same, only it's wineries. I mean, there's dozens of them in the downtown core. And you can't turn around and not find a half a dozen wineries to choose. And downtown Walla Walla is just this really cool space. And you mentioned the Walla Walla Balloon Festival, which I haven't been able to make it there yet. Hopefully soon. I mean, and I'm trying to think.
And then that mission too. There's that Whitman mission that was really interesting.
Whitman mission. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, Walla Walla had a lot of interesting things. And again, it's it's a great place to go in the winter because it's sunny. As long as you can get through the pass, not get snowed.
Right.
Get all the snow and wet. Yeah, but the Whitman mission was really interesting. And that I remember they had like an indoor visitor center that was nicely wheelchair accessible, and then it was kind of like grass and dirt path sort of thing through like basically the foundations of what used to be there. So that was actually a very sad story, the whole thing there. Yes. But it was interesting. So yeah, there's a lot to see here.
Have you ever been to it's Goldendale, and it's the Stonehenge replica? Is that Marymore? Is that wheelchair accessible?
Yeah, it is actually. And yeah, I've been there. Okay. I've also been to the real Stonehenge too. Which is also accessible.
So which one did you prefer? Which one did you prefer?
This one was a lot closer. It was actually a really pretty view too. Honestly, this one was actually a better view. So the one here in Washington.
Okay. So normally we talk about Washington State, but with your situation, I would like to kind of just touch on you this air travel.
Yeah.
And you've been to Europe multiple times now.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead.
I have to imagine logistics become more complex.
Oh, absolutely. You got to plan more carefully for sure. Yeah. Yeah. It's when I plan my trips first of all, I prefer to plan my own. One time I took a travel agency that was, they were claiming to be all inclusive and all that kind of stuff. And they were owned by 2 able-bodied people, and maybe they had great intentions, but it was really an uncomfortable trip for me. It was really, really not a good experience. And so on that particular trip, I went to Portugal with them, and then I went plan on my own to meet a friend and go through Slovenia because my grandparents immigrated from Slovenia, and I wanted to see where they came from. I wanted to see their little village and everything. So after the Portugal thing, I was just exhausted. And then when we got over to Slovenia on the part that I had planned, it was beautiful. It was great. I mean, it was really, truly wheelchair accessible. I mean, it was really awesome. I saw so much, and it was so much easier without having somebody tell me we're going to do this, and I'm looking at it going, I don't know if that's a good idea, which is they did kind of a lot of that on the one that I paid somebody else to do. So I decided after that I was just going to plan my own. And I've done really well. I mean, there are some times that I ran into something like when we went to Germany one year. I wanted to go to Neuschwanstein Castle, that Disney castle type of thing.
Okay.
And boy, I tell you, that was way steeper of a hill getting into it than I ever imagined. I could not do that myself. And I was in my manual chair. There was just no way, and so plus it was just pouring down rain because, you pre-plan and you get the ticket for, this day because you need to reserve the elevator. And because, it does take more planning, not everybody goes and uses the elevator, but if you're in a wheelchair, of course, they do allow that. But so, it took pre-planning. So it's not like we could say, gee, it's raining, we're not going today. So we did have to go in this pouring down rain. It was kind of interesting, but in retrospect, I would not, that was hard. That was really hard. So I've made little mistakes like that, but it was, it's because I haven't been there. And all I can do is ask other people that I know who use wheelchairs, have you been there? How was it? And I guess the gal that I had talked to, she must be a power horse or something, because she said she would have been able to, I think she had her husband pushing her up the hill, but she said she would be able to do it on her own, and there's no way. But she's a paraplegic. I'm a quad. So there's a difference in arm strength and hand strength and all that stuff. So, I think I had some really good European trips. I went to Austria one year, and I saw Yo-Yo Ma play, what does he play? The cello at the Music Varian, the great concert hall.
Oh, wow.
Incredible. It was just incredible. That was a wonderful. And I saw the Lipizan horses, the Lipizan horses.
Right.
Both in Slovenia, which is where they're bred. There's the Lipizan in Lipika, in Slovenia. They have the original breeding farm it's been there for like 430 years, and it's the very same one that during World War II, was it General Patton? He saved the horses. There's a Disney movie about it. That's the very farm. I was at that very farm, was able to pet the horses, and they were like big white puppy dogs. It was very cool. And then I went to Austria, where they have the actual, all the competitions and everything is in Austria, where the Habsburgs, it's behind the Hofburg Palace, and it's the Spanish Riding School of Austria. So they had, that's where they breed them to compete there. So it was pretty cool. It was actually, I've seen a lot of Europe, and there's so much that I really love there. Oh, this most recent, in 2019, my husband and I went to the Netherlands, which is wonderful. The Netherlands and Belgium are flat. The whole country's flat. I mean, they have diked areas, and they're like, I don't know, 20 feet below sea level or whatever it is. And so, but the whole place is flat. And one of the coolest things that we saw, we went to the Kinderdijk windmills. It's a UNESCO heritage site. And so it's that famous painting, you see all these windmills in a row, looking back at it. It's fun. Yeah. And then so I got my picture. I had my husband take my picture with that in the background. And that was really cool. And those things, that is all about water management. Those things were, to pump all the water so you could clear the land and then you could farm the land way back hundreds of years ago. And he and I we met working in the water industry. I was a water engineer for a lot of years. I worked for about 20 years in the water industry, in water treatment, actually. And so it was so cool seeing from the engineering perspective. Those Dutch people are just incredible water engineers. It is just impressive. Really, really amazing. So it was such a neat historic thing and just easy to get around. And then, of course, Belgium being flat, it was very easy, and they have awesome chocolate.
Okay.
They have awesome chocolate, and they're Belgian waffles.
There you go. Well, we're going to wrap this up. And so what I'd like you to do is tell people where they can find you online.
My website is just my name. It's lillylongshore.com. It's Lilly, Longshore, Longshore. And that's what I have a lot of articles that I wrote for mostly New Mobility Magazine and the Paralyzed PN magazine for the Paralyzed Veterans Association. And then I also have my speaker page on there too, and a blog too. And then my book is available at Amazon.com. It's only an ebook. It's designed to be an ebook because I've got a lot of links in there that you can tap on and get a whole lot more information of whatever you're interested in. So it's two reasons I made it an ebook. That's one of them, because I think it just expands the amount of information you can get. And then the other reason is that for, as I said, my son is blind and I have a vision impairment as well. And electronic books, you can make the font as big as you want. You can flip the contrast and make it be white letters on black background so it pops easier. And so I'm just trying to be as inclusive as I can. And I think the ebooks are wonderful.
So I love the title of your book, which we really haven't said, which is Lilly's Most Excellent Wheelchair Adventures, Wheeling Washington State. Yeah. I'm sorry. This is how my mind works. Most Excellent Adventure. I think Bill and Ted. I'm sorry. It's a bad reference, but
that's exactly right. That's exactly why I called it that.
I just think the title's outstanding. So we will put links to your website and to the Amazon page for that. I just want to thank you for, it's serendipity that people, connect people on a platform, and then we end up having conversations. So I think it's great.
Well, thank you. I thank you for the opportunity. I really appreciate it. And it's good. It's a good information to get out there. And I really appreciate your efforts in this.
Well, thank you. And our goal is to, showcase Washington State, and that means all of Washington State. So this is great. So thank you for being on the show, and we will talk soon.
All right. Well, thanks, Scott.
Join us next time for another episode of the Exploring Washington State podcast.